Now let's welcome Sahiba for awesome talk.
Let me share my screen. You see it? Okay, so I'll start. Thank you, Rui, and thank you, Farjana and Sushmita, for inviting me to talk at the seminar. And I'm going to be talking about uniform anti-maximum principles via operator theory. So let's look at what anti-maximum principles are. First of all, the most simple version of the maximum principle, which we see in undergraduate or master's differential equations course. So if you have a bounded and smooth domain omega in RD, and u is a real valued smooth function on omega, then if the Laplacian of u is positive, then the maximum principle says that u attains its maximum on the boundary of omega. So this is the most simple version of the maximum principle. And as a result of this maximum principle, we have the following. So we take E to be the L2 space over the unit interval 0, 1, and A to be the Laplacian. So since we are on a unit interval, the Laplacian here becomes just the double derivative. And we endow the Laplacian with Dirichlet boundary conditions, which means that U vanishes on the boundary. So U0 and U1 is equal to 0. Then if we consider the equation minus AU is equal to F, then as a consequence of the maximum principle, we have that the positivity of F implies the positivity of U. And how do we get it by the maximum principle is the following way. So if F is positive, then that means that the minus Laplacian of U is positive, or in other words, the Laplacian of minus U is positive. That means that minus U attains a maximum on the boundary. But on the boundary, we have zero boundary conditions. So 0 is the maximum. That means that minus U, it has to be less than or equal to 0, or equivalently, U has to be greater than or equal to 0. And here, since we are on an L2 space, positivity just means that the function is positive almost everywhere. So this is the consequence of the maximum principle. But now, here we considered Dirichlet boundary conditions. Now, if we stick to the Laplacian and change the Dirichlet boundary conditions to periodic boundary conditions, so U0 is equal to U1 and U dash 0 is equal to U dash of 1. Then again, if we consider the equation minus AU is equal to F, then we no more have that the positivity of F implies the positivity of U. And an easy way to see this is to take F to be the constant 0 function and U to be the constant minus 1 function. Then F is greater than or equal to 0. And U satisfies this equation because minus AU is 0, because it's a constant minus 1 function. So the double derivative is naturally 0. And F is positive, but U is a negative function, so it's never positive. And so we no more have that F positive implies U is positive. But we're mathematicians, so if we have a concept and we find a counterexample, then our natural question is, does this example satisfy something weaker? And that's what we explore here. And the answer is yes. So the weaker property this example satisfies is the following. If we consider now the equation lambda minus AU is equal to F, where lambda is a real number in the resolvent set of A, then the positivity of F implies positivity of U for all lambda greater than the spectral bound. So, the spectral bound here is the supremum of real part of lambda, where lambda is a spectral value of A. And now what we have is something which is called the resolvent positivity. So we consider the equation lambda minus AU is equal to F. Because lambda is in the resolvent set of A, so lambda minus A is invertible. So U is actually equal to the resolvent of A at lambda applied to F. And so this claim here says that the positivity of F implies the positivity of the resolvent at lambda applied to F for every lambda larger than the spectral bound. In this case, the spectral bound turns out to be 0. So in particular, we have that positivity of F implies positivity of U for all lambda larger than 0. And in this case, it's actually A is called a resolvent positive operator. So what we did first was we considered the Laplacian with Dirichlet boundary conditions. Then we considered the Laplacian with periodic boundary conditions and saw that it satisfied something weaker than the general maximum principle. Now, if we keep the periodic boundary condition and instead of a second order operator, we take the third order operator. So we keep the periodic boundary condition. So now we have to add the condition. Since it's a third order operator, we need to add that U double dash 0 is also equal to U double dash 1 in our domain of A. Then now again, if we consider the previous equation that we had, lambda minus AU is equal to F, then we no longer have that the positivity of F implies the positivity of U everywhere on the right of the spectral bound. And if you're familiar with the theory of C0 semigroups, then I can tell you that this can be shown by showing that A generates a C0 semigroup, which is not positive. And as a result, we cannot have resolvent positivity. If you're not familiar with C0 semigroups, then I would just ask you to believe me that we indeed do not have resolvent positivity here. But the point is that we again have a counterexample to some concept. And now we again ask, does this satisfy something weaker? And the answer is indeed yes. The answer is, so what this equation satisfies is that if F is positive, then U is positive, not everywhere on the right of the spectral bound, but in a small right neighborhood of the spectral bound. So in a small neighborhood on the right of the spectral bound, we indeed have that positivity of F implies positivity of U. In fact, we also have that the positivity of F implies the negativity of U in a left neighborhood of the spectral bound. And this will turn out to be what we call the anti-maximum principle. So positivity preserving is called the maximum principle. Positivity preserving on the right is called the maximum principle. And positivity inverting on the right is on the left, sorry, is called the anti-maximum principle. So let me make this more formal. And by the end of my talk, I will actually prove this to you that we indeed have this weak version of the anti-maximum and the maximum principle for the third order operator. But let's just formalize the maximum and anti-maximum principles for now. So we stick to LP spaces and we take A to be a closed and densely defined operator on an LP space, any LP space. Moreover, we take lambda naught to be a real number in the spectrum of A, which is also an isolated spectral value. So there is a neighborhood of lambda naught in which there is no other spectral value, basically. Then we say that A satisfies the maximum principle if the resolvent is positivity preserving in a right neighborhood of lambda naught. And analogously, we say that A satisfies the anti-maximum principle if minus of the resolvent is positivity preserving in a left neighborhood of lambda naught. So minus of resolvent being positivity preserving means that if the initial value F is positive, then minus of resolvent at F is positive. That means that the resolvent of lambda at F is negative. So this is the same as saying that F positive implies U negative in a left neighborhood of lambda naught. So this is the formal version of the maximum and anti-maximum principles, which I'm going to be looking at today. So let's look at what's the intuition behind why we would expect this behavior and what is the role of eigenvectors in this. So we start with a bounded domain in RD and we take A to be any differential operator on LP omega. Assume the following. Lambda naught is a real number in the spectrum of A, which is also a first order pole of the resolvent of A. Moreover, since lambda naught is a pole of the resolvent, it implies that lambda naught has to be an eigenvalue, But we also in addition assume that lambda naught is a geometrically simple eigenvalue, which means that the eigenspace of of lambda naught is one dimensional. And since lambda naught is an eigenvalue of A, it is also an eigenvalue of the dual of A. The Banach A star is the Banach space dual of A. And we also assume that the eigenspace generated by this is also one dimensional. Moreover, we assume that these eigenvectors are strictly positive almost everywhere. And finally, we just normalize the eigenvectors to say that when phi is tested with V, then we get constant one. That is just normalizing the eigenvectors. Then, because lambda naught is a first order pole of the resolvent, we have the following convergence. Lambda minus lambda naught resolvent of A at lambda applied to F converges to VO times phi F as lambda decreases to lambda naught. And here VO times phi F is just phi tested with F applied to V. So what we have here, we assume that V and phi are strictly positive vectors. So that means that this operator, this rank 1 operator VO times phi has to be positive. And since we are going towards lambda naught from the right, so we also have that lambda minus lambda naught is positive. So since this is positive and lambda minus lambda naught is positive, and this converges to something positive, so what we expect is that the resolvent is also positive in a right neighborhood of lambda naught because it's going closer and closer to a positive function. So we expect that after some, as it gets very close to lambda naught, since we are going to lambda naught from the right, so what we expect is that as we go closer and closer and closer to lambda naught, there will be some point after which the resolvent becomes positive. So that means that we expect resolvent to be positive in a right neighborhood of lambda naught. And also because lambda naught is a first order pole of the resolvent, so this convergence is also true as lambda increases to lambda naught. So as we go to lambda naught from the left, then the convergence also holds. But now in this case, lambda minus lambda naught becomes negative. And that is the reason that we expect negativity of the resolvent in a left neighborhood of lambda naught. So in a left neighborhood, this is why we expect negativity, and this is the reason to expect positivity on the right and negativity on the left. This is the intuition behind the weaker versions of the maximum and anti-maximum principle. But now we have a concept and an intuition. So the first thing we do is we test our most basic examples that we have and check whether those examples satisfy this concept. So let's look at the example of a Laplacian with periodic boundary conditions. For simplicity, we stick to the unit interval 0, 1. Then the spectral bound turns out to be 0. And by a direct computation, one can check that the resolvent is actually negative in a left neighborhood of 0. So since we are on a unit interval, so we just have A is the double derivative. We can just compute the resolvent by variation of parameters and see that the resolvent actually turns out to be negative in a left neighborhood of 0. But this is one example. So once we test usually periodic boundary conditions and Neumann boundary conditions have similar properties. And actually it turns out that if we consider the Laplacian with the Neumann boundary conditions, then again this is satisfied that the resolvent is negative in a left neighborhood. So now we know for periodic and Neumann boundary conditions. And so we must also check the Dirichlet boundary conditions. So now let's check the Dirichlet boundary conditions. So again, we take the Laplacian with Dirichlet boundary conditions. Then the spectral bound is, I think, minus pi squared by 4. So it is negative. But again, we can directly compute the resolvent. And the direct computation gives us that the resolvent is never negative on the left of the spectral bound. We wanted it to be negative in a left neighborhood, but it is not even negative at any point on the left of the spectral bound. So our intuition sort of fails because all the assumptions in the intuition are actually satisfied, but what we expected is not satisfied. So we want to understand this behavior, that what is so special about Neumann and periodic boundary conditions. They must actually satisfy something stronger, which is not satisfied in the case of Dirichlet boundary conditions. And why does even the weaker version of the anti-maximum principle failure, but it holds in case of periodic or say the Neumann boundary conditions? So let's see what's the problem and what to do about the problem. So we start with a positive non-zero function f in LP space. Then we had this convergence to a positive function as lambda decreases to lambda naught. I think this should have been lambda goes up. It should have been an up arrow here. And the problem was that the resolvent is not negative necessarily in a left neighborhood of lambda naught, as we saw for the Dirichlet Laplacian. So the explanation of this is that in LP spaces, convergence to a negative function does not imply negativity, as one would expect, as happens, say, for instance, on the spaces of continuous functions. And the workaround to this is that we consider different modes of convergence. So here the LP convergence, we basically take the convergence in strong operator topology. So the workaround of this is to consider some stronger convergence in some other topology, which actually guarantees that convergence to a negative function would imply negativity in a neighborhood. However, even if we find a workaround to this, there is another problem, and that is that even if you get that the resolvent is negative in a left neighborhood, this left neighborhood might still depend on the initial value f. And so you can still get negativity of the resolvent at f, but you might not be able to find a uniform neighborhood in which the whole resolvent operator is negative. And this is the reason. So this leads to a distinction between uniform and individual anti-maximum principles. And analogously, the similar situation occurs for maximum principles. And so even in the case of maximum principles, there is a need to distinguish between uniform and individual maximum principles. For this talk, I'm going to stick to uniform maximum principles, but one can, of course, also study individual maximum and anti-maximum principles and characterize them. And they're usually easier to characterize, actually. Okay, so now I will show you a characterization for uniform anti-maximum principle. So we again start with a closed and densely defined operator on LP space. I stick to LP spaces for the sake of simplicity, but the result I say here is also true on general Banach lattices. And so it's also true on the spaces of continuous functions. So the theorem is as follows. If we have two vectors, strictly positive, V is in the LP space and phi is in the dual of the LP space, so the LQ space. And lambda naught is a real number in the spectrum of A, which is as before a first order pole of the resolvent. In addition, we assume that there exist non-negative integers such that domain of A to the power of M1 is contained in the principal ideal generated by V, and domain of the dual of A to the power of M2 is contained in the principal ideal generated by phi. Now I said for simplicity, I want to stick to LP spaces, but now I introduced a Banach space notation here. So I must tell you what this notation is, what are principal ideals. In order to tell you what a principal ideal is, first I introduce the following notation. For any two vectors x and y, or any two operators x and y, we say x precedes y, or equivalently y succeeds x, if there exists a non-zero constant such that x is dominated by a constant multiple of y. And once we have this notation, we can define the principal ideal generated by x to be all the functions f in E such that modulus of f is dominated by a constant multiple of x. And in fact, when you are in an LP space and if you have some nice vectors X, then actually the principal ideal just turns out to be L infinity spaces. So this assumption can actually be tested via Sobolev embedding theorems when you're in LP spaces. And this is also the workaround that I talked about in the previous slide. I said that we will consider different modes of convergence. And this is the assumption which actually gives us different modes of mode of convergence. Using this domination assumptions, we actually show that these domination assumptions imply that the convergence that we had earlier only in the LP space is now actually true from L1 to L infinity. And once you have a convergence from a function in L1 to L infinity, then that does actually imply that close to a negative function implies negativity in a neighborhood. So that is the reason to consider these domination assumption. And in addition, we have an assumption, which is as before, that the corresponding eigenspaces are one-dimensional and they're generated by this V and phi respectively. Then if there exists a real number mu naught in the resolvent of A, which is on the right of lambda naught, such that the resolvent of A at mu naught dominates a negative multiple of VO times pi, then the following are equivalent. First, we have the uniform anti-maximum principle, that the resolvent of A at mu is dominated by a negative multiple of VO times pi in a left neighborhood of lambda naught. So since it's dominated by something negative, in particular it is negative, so we actually have the uniform anti-maximum principle that I stated before. And this is equivalent to just checking that the resolvent is dominated by a constant multiple of VO times pi at one point mu naught, which is the same as the previous assumption, the mu naught greater than lambda naught. So these conditions are equivalent. But the idea of this result was, or the motivation of this result was mainly to have an abstract result. Both maximum and anti-maximum principles were studied for concrete differential operators using kernel estimates, but there was no abstract theory previously. So the idea behind this was to have an abstract theory and a result which is applicable to concrete differential operators. And it can also prove or disprove maximum and anti-maximum principles that are already known before. So now I show you a result which actually looks very technical at first glance. So I should also show you some examples to show that indeed one can prove and disprove maximum and anti-maximum principles via this theorem. And before I do that, I would mention that just using a change of signs, one can analogously characterize uniform maximum principle as well. Okay, so let's look at some examples. And let's come back to the periodic boundary conditions, which I had claimed before. That so what happens in this case? In this case, the eigenvectors, so the operator is self-adjoint. So we only need to check everything for the operator A. And now we are on an L2 space. It turns out that the eigenvectors are just constant one function. The spectral bound is 0 as seen before. Moreover, it turns out that B is satisfied everywhere on the right of the spectral bound. Now, first of all, why this characterization is applicable, we need to check that this assumption is satisfied. But as I mentioned before, this condition is actually free because A generates a positive C0 semigroup. And for positive C0 semigroups, this assumption is actually comes off free of cost because the resolvent on the right of the spectral bound is always positive. So since it is positive, it is in particular obviously dominating something negative. So this condition is free of cost for generators of C0, positive C0 semigroups. So the characterization is indeed valid. And so we only need to check that it is dominated by a constant multiple of 1 O times 1 here. And that is actually also true everywhere on the right of the spectral bound, which is easy to check. And so by the above characterization, we have a uniform anti-maximum principle at the spectral bound of A. And since we have it for periodic boundary conditions, and similarly, the same result holds for using the exact same arguments for the Neumann boundary conditions as well. But we had seen that the anti-maximum principle does not hold for Dirichlet boundary conditions. And that can also be seen using this results. So now we again take the Laplacian with Dirichlet boundary conditions. Then as I said before, the spectral bound is negative, and the eigenvectors here, so Vx is sine pi x. It's again a self-adjoint operator, so everything only needs to be checked for A. Now, again, it actually generates a positive C0 semigroup, so the characterization comes free of cost. And it turns out that B is not satisfied for any number larger than the spectral bound. And so there is no uniform anti-maximum principle at the spectral bound of A. So this is the reason the Dirichlet boundary conditions actually do not satisfy an anti-maximum principle. The problem is that it is not dominated by a constant multiple of the rank 1 operator, which is obtained using the eigenvectors. And now finally coming to my last example, which is what I promised you in my first slide, is that the periodic boundary conditions of the odd order of the third order operator, that we can prove the maximum and anti-maximum principle. I will show you how we can prove it. And so this is how I'll end my talk. But instead of considering the third order operator, we can actually consider any odd order operator. So here k is any non-negative integer. So we take AU to be to be an odd order operator with periodic boundary conditions on L2. Then the spectral bound is 0. The eigenvectors are constant one function. And it can be shown that the resolvent of A at mu is sandwiched between negative and positive multiples of 1 O times 1 for all real number mu in the resolvent set of A. So since this estimate holds everywhere, in particular, we have that the resolvent dominates a negative multiple of 1 O times 1. So the characterization is valid. And also we have that the resolvent is dominated by a constant multiple of 1 O times 1. So B is satisfied. And so we have a uniform anti-maximum principle at the spectral bound. But I had said that analogously one can prove a maximum principle, and using that, since we have an estimate, since we have a double estimate, so all the conditions of the maximum principle are also satisfied, and therefore we have a maximum principle here as well. So this is the reason we have the maximum principle, and this is where I leave you today. Thank you.